Hello and welcome. I am Alicia. I am the owner and COO of Alicia Beauty. So we are here. We have finally made it. We have been talking about making a YouTube channel for forever. And what a better time than this quarantine shut-in to get us started. So first video today, we're just going to do something nice, sultry, when we can go back outside, something going out with the girls, you on vacation with Bae, wherever your heart takes you after this quarantine. So stay tuned and we'll make some beauty happen. So first things first, we're going to set the brows. We're going to take some setting powder, dust all over the brow area. I do this mostly because I get very oily in my T-zone, and the last thing I want is to do all this work on my brows and then for them to slick right off. So for the next step, I actually use two brow pencils. They are both from ELF, in which I will list in the description box. First one is a darker brown. The second one will be a lighter, more brunette color. But I make sure, because I have no brows myself, or rather very little brow hair, I try to make sure that they are perfectly aligned as much as possible, going in on each side. Now, of course, you will notice I am very OCD about my eyebrows, not just on mine but also for clients as well. So I will go in and make sure they are as symmetric as possible. I'll do it once here and then also do it again, after my concealer is set. That way I know finished look, everything will be perfectly as symmetrical as I can get it. So once I get it as symmetric and perfect as I can, I'm going to begin filling it in, starting at the tail portion. I'm only going to go about 2/3 in, only because you don't want that blocky, I don't know, I just don't like when brows look too blocky. For me personally, I will taper my brows to the end of time. I don't care, 2030, 2040, y'all say it's out of style. We are tapering the brows. So we're just going to take that darker brow pencil as I explained, and we're just going to again go in about 2/3. This brow I kind of went in a little further only because there is less brow hair. And then at that point, since I went in on the opposite side, I figured I might as well make them symmetrical. And then I kept going in, and we're just going to always fade in the front. Usually for my clients with brows, it would look almost complete at this point, especially if you have that brow hair there. But again, since I do not, we're just gonna keep going in and taper it in more and more. Once that's done, I'm gonna take that lighter brow pencil. In the beginning it will look too light, but I promise it will come together. I purposely do this because I'm gonna go ahead and mix it into the brow. I don't make my brows too dark, only because it is supposed to be a lighter look. If I was going for something a little more bold, a little more dramatic, well, one, I would probably use brow gel, but because I'm trying to go for a soft, natural, soft glam type of look, we're just going to continue to use this brow pencil. It kind of just gives me the effect of having, soft brows. And since I have to create them, I don't want them to look too plastered or too drawn on. I want to kind of create the illusion that I have brows and I'm just concealing them softly. Then if you have watched any amount of YouTube videos, we're going to clean up the brow with concealer. This is my favorite concealer to use. It's not too far off from my skin tone. This is the Colourpop, I believe, medium 36. I should know. I've only used this for the last 2 years. And so this one's much easier to transform into my skin color. I do have a little bit of darkness on my eyes, so this one kind of brings back the natural color on my face. And so again, we're just kind of try to be as precise as possible and then clean up underneath the brows. So now that my brows are concealed, we're just gonna go in and buff out that concealer. Usually this concealer does not dry as fast, but because it's traveled with me to about 3 different states with very humid conditions, it's about gone now. It's about trashed, but I mean, still does the job for now. And then we're using the Touch and Soul primer. I do like this one for my smile lines. We are glad I live a happy life, but I do like for my foundation to be flawless, so I try to put that as much into the lines as possible. Right after, we're going to go in with the Milk Hydrating Primer. This is probably the #1 hydrating primer, or primer in general, I have in my makeup kit. I love it for myself, I love it for my clients. It works for dry skin, combination, oily. They really did their business with this one. And then I'm just gonna make sure that is buffed all the way into my skin. I do have to always put out there, my skin is moisturized. I will never ever start any type of makeup without moisturized skin. Even though I do have oily skin, that is just a recipe for disaster. So just making sure that's as buffed in as possible. The concealer does look a little crazy right now, but I do promise it'll eventually get a little better. So once I feel that it is tacky, I will begin to start putting on my foundation. And oh, you know what, I forgot, I did put a little bit more of the Touch and Soul primer. I really did want this to be flawless. My first YouTube video, I just feel like can't mess this up, gotta get it correct. Not only, it just seems like my smile lines have gotten deeper. I don't know if it's age. It's so odd, like during pregnancy my face got fatter and then all of a sudden it's getting thinner. So before we place our foundation, we're just going to take that Beauty Bakerie setting powder and we are going to place that on top of the primer. So now we have concealed and set with powder. So I am again just trying to get the last final steps in on my brows, because after foundation I will not try to touch them again. So now that we are all set, it is time for our base. I'm going with the Beauty Bakerie 317 in foundation, and then I'm going to spray my Real Techniques foundation brush and I'm going to tap that in all over my skin. So it is very evident that I do not own a 4 head. We very much so rock a 5 head, and so I'm going to try to be as light as possible, although I am going to put a good amount of foundation. Did you guys see again how my acne scarring just disappeared? I really am loving this Beauty Bakerie foundation. Usually before this step I would conceal before I laid the foundation on, but this is a full coverage foundation. If you need something that is lightweight and breathable, yet hides all of our sins, this is the one. I didn't do any extra concealing, as you saw, and everything is perfect. The base is laid. I cannot ask any other foundation to do this. Okay, I lied, maybe Fenty, but Beauty Bakerie, I'm very much so impressed. I must say also I am new to the Beauty Bakerie family, not to their setting powders, but I was not hip to their foundations. I don't know why. Apparently I've been asleep. Glad I woke up from that nap. So where I had concealed and it had dried down a little too quickly, I'm just going to make sure that foundation gets as close as possible to the brow bone. I am okay with leaving it a bit highlighted only because I'm going to come behind it with a concealer anyway, but we don't want, too much of a halo brow going on. So because your foundation is your base, I am very much so a stickler on making sure every piece of the skin is evenly laid. I do have bags under my eyes, so you will see me repeatedly look up, look down, look to the side, just so I can make sure that foundation gets in perfectly. Also under the neck, I do have more acne scarring on my chin and towards my neck, which I don't mind it too much now, but I want to make sure it does all blend. And then taking the damp beauty blender, I'm just going to press that into my skin and then just wash my face afterwards. I love it. It just turns right back into my skin. So I believe the name is Sonia Cushik. I'm pretty sure I jumbled that up, but I know these came from Target. They are 2 for $8. One of my friends actually told me about this and I love it. I love the size and the consistency. It's very nice and bouncy. Also, of course, as you can tell, it does a great job blending in all my foundation, and the pointy tip gets where it needs to be. Also, I do like the width that it takes, a little bit less time for me to blend everything out. You definitely cannot tell because, again, OCD showing, but I do always want to make sure everything looks perfectly even. Neck, chin, face, want to just make sure everything blends in as much as possible. So next thing, we're going to go in with my concealer, starting on my smile lines. And because this is a more soft glam look that I'm doing today, I'm going to go ahead and only use 2 concealers. One to highlight pretty good. It's about maybe 3 to 4 shades, honestly, lighter than my skin tone. And then I'm going to use that M36 from Colourpop on my smile lines. Again, because they are so in depth into my skin, I will place that concealer down first and purposely let that one dry down. And then once I am done blending, I'm going to take the concealer and then we're just going to conceal on all the high points of the face. So I believe this is the Colourpop 20, if I'm not mistaken. And the undertone is a little more peachy, but I don't know, for some reason it worked out. Usually I believe I use the 28 from Colourpop, if I'm not mistaken, but for whatever reason it was misplaced. But it actually tended to work out a bit. Once I mixed it with the M36, the finish came out beautifully, so I, might be onto something. So I just continue to take the M36 and the M20 and mix those. Again, I don't want it to be too bright, like a full glam look. I want it to be softer. So I'm just going to very vividly, please excuse me, my kids lost my fan and they won't give it back. But again, we're just going to go ahead and mix those 2 colors together just so I can get a nice highlight, a little bit of brightness, but not too dramatic. So for me personally, if I am not blended properly, I will not come outside. So I will sit here until everything is blended and meshed perfectly. I don't want any type of creasing. So we're just going to go in and make sure we get that concealer pushed out where it needs to be and stay put where I want it. But yeah, if it, looks like a lot, it's probably because it is. But again, I like to use my makeup as my personal canvas. So if it's not coming correct, we're not leaving home. So again, an effort to try to conceal where my baggy eyes may crease and fold. I just make sure I get in nice and evenly under my eye. I try to make sure I take the pointy tip of the beauty blender and to firmly press it into the skin as much as possible, into any type of folds or creases, just so that when I go in with the powder, it doesn't get caked up between the ridges and doesn't look as nice and sharp. So now I'm just going to take the back end of the beauty blender and just make sure it meshes in perfectly with my foundation, just so there's no harsh lines between where I highlighted and where my foundation lays. Next, I'm going to take the Mented foundation stick, and this is in M20, and I'm just going to follow the natural contour line, the hollows of my cheeks, and create some sharpness and contrast. Also try to make sure I line up both contrast lines on each side perfectly. You definitely don't want sharp cheekbones that are uneven. That doesn't look so nice. And then of course just tapping along the forehead. Well, rather, we're going to make my 5 head into a 4, and we're also going to erase some of this baby fat left on my chin, but we're just going to lay it down, make sure it's all symmetric, and then we're going to begin to blend that out. So we are just going to speed through this portion, but basically we're going to go in and blend out that contour everywhere that I placed it. So now that it is all blended out, we're going to do the same trick and take the back of the beauty blender with our leftover foundation and just also begin to blend it out. Again, making sure there is no harsh lines between our highlight and our contour. Next up, we're going to place concealer on our eyelids. Therefore, I can blend it out and have time for it to dry down before I place the powder on it. So again, because this is a more neutral, soft glam look, I'm just going to make sure my concealer dries down. If I were to do something with glitter or more of a brighter pigment, I would use the concealer a little more to a wet to tacky consistency. But since we're just going to make sure that our browns pack on as neatly as possible, I'm just going to set all of the concealer down. And then again, you see me going in underneath. I did get a little bit of creasing after I had set the concealer. And again, I do have that trouble in my day-to-day routine only because I do have bags, compliments of the 4 kids at home. But anywho, I just, want to make sure it is concealed as possible. I even went ahead and lifted up the eyelid where it is creased, just so I make sure we get all in between there. Again, I'm very picky when it comes to trying to do a seamless look. But again, this gives time for all of my concealer to dry down a bit better. And so before we put down the powder, we have everything set back into place how I want it. And so now we're just going to set everywhere we highlighted, especially where we get the creasing. And this is the Beauty Bakerie Oat and Cassava powder mixed together. I just happen to find that the less white powder I use on melanated skin, the less chance of flashback. So I do like to always mix the white and the yellow powder together. But again, we're just gonna go in and set everywhere. I do not bake per se. I did leave the powder on just a tad bit heavier this time. That's only because I tried my best to combat that creasing that started to cake up a little bit where I had put the extra concealer down. But usually you won't see me, set too much. I will usually just, place it and wipe it off. But I, still came out great, so I was still happy with the results. So next step, we're just going to go ahead and set the eyelids. They are pretty much dried down, but we just go ahead and set the concealer anyway, just so there is no creasing after we place down our shadows. So again, we're just taking a bigger, fluffier brush and we're going to go ahead and dust away all of that excess powder. So now we are finally getting into the eyes. This is from the Morphe 39A palette. I will do my best to see if these have names. I'm not for sure if they do, but if they do have names to the colors, I definitely will list them below. But we're just starting with that lightest brown shade that's in the palette. And then I'm just going in all the way to the top using that as my transition shade. So now I'm going in with the second darkest shade on the palette, and I'm just going to work and window wipe that color into my crease. So after the first two colors are blended, we're going to go in with the darkest brown in the mid section of the palette, and we're just going to blend that into the outer V and smudge it just a tad back into the crease. So now that all three colors are placed, I just go back with each brush and make sure each color blends with the other perfectly. And notice I am intentionally avoiding the lid space because we're going to go ahead and place the final color on the lid, and I don't want too much of a deepening of that shimmer shade. And I really love the shimmers in this palette. Watch how easily that color lays down, smooth like butter. And then I'm not doing so much of a cut crease, but more of a faux cut crease, if you will. I'm just going to take that shimmer shade and I'm going to round it out a bit as if I were cutting the crease, but I'm just following the natural eye shape that I have. And again, now that all colors are placed, I'm just going to work my way backwards from the deepest color to my transition color and just make sure everything blends in perfectly. There was just a tiny bit of fallout, but not too much. That's what I do love about this palette. There is not too much of the discrepancy. So I'm just going in and swiping off some of that glitter. So I know on my Facebook Live I did put a wing liner, but I decided for this look I wanted the attention more on the center of my eyelids. So I just put down a very thin black line for my lashes to adhere to. And I just want to make sure I go as close as possible as I can to my lash line. And I don't want to wing it out too much, but just a tad that it tails off at the end. If you see me keep dancing, that's because in the mirror I can see the baddie emerging as we're putting on this eyeliner. And of course everyone knows once the lashes go on, the attitude starts to pop out. So you cannot see it on camera, but a trick that I do, I always place my lash glue down first for it to get tacky. And then I'm just going over my contour with my bronzer to give my face a little bit more warmth. This is the Mented Season 1. And we're just going to go all the way around and put a little bit more warmth back into my face. So as I'm bronzing my nose, I look up and notice somehow I got eyeliner on my eyelid, but of course not to worry. This eyeshadow is pretty good with mistakes. I am just going to take a little bit more of that shimmer and go over it, and it just literally adheres to the eyeliner and disappears. So now we are going to apply our Milani mascara, and unfortunately my camera did die right at the most inopportune time, so I did throw on the lashes off camera. Next step, we're just going to put on our blush and our highlighter, and we are good to go. So the blush is from the Morphe 8W palette, and that is the color MUA. I'm just going to apply that over my cheeks. Next, the highlighter is from that Mented bronzer palette, and again that is the Season 1, and we're just going to also brush that highlighter at our highest points of the cheeks. I always go in also over my nose and my cupid's bow, just to make sure all of my highlighted points that I want to have a little glisten have a little bit of a shine to it. And this highlighter gives the most subtle but banging shine that I have come across this season. So I'm just going to line my lips with the NYX lip liner color in brown. I'm just going to outline my lips and contour the center just a bit. So after I have lined them to my liking, I'm going to take this nude color from Morphe. Again, the name will be in the description box, and I'm just going to cover the entire lip. After I have covered it, I'm going to take a brush and just pat it down to get a more mattifying effect. Once it is matte to my liking, I'm going to take just a hint of this gloss from Too Faced, just to give a very subtle shine on the outside of my lips. So again, going in with the brush, we are going to make sure everything blends in on the lips like how we do the eyes. I did not want too much of a gloss effect, but I did want a little bit of the iridescent colors to pop on the nude. And then I decided to be extra and go into the Jackie Aina palette and glisten the inner corner of my lids just a bit. But I am glad I did, because it did help to create my eyes a little bit more pop in the end. Does it look like I'm feeling myself? Because I am. I don't know, something about the inner corner just made it pop, and I'm just too happy with how this look came out. We were giving some looks, here's some shoulders, some angles. Yes, love it. Okay, that is the finished look. We are good to go. We would spray, mattify, get out the door. Oh, speaking of mattify, if you don't have this Morphe matte setting spray, you're missing out. That's all I need to tell you. This lasts all day, don't go nowhere. Stick to the skin, we're good to go. But that's it. Thank you for joining today. We'll see you again next time.